Actually, speaking of which, today we are going to talk about the name of the Shakuhachi. In fact, the Shakuhachi I have in my hand is a standard length of 1 shaku, 8 sun 54, which is about 5 centimeters. In fact, it is also called Shakuhachi when it is 1 shaku 7 sun, and Shakuhachi when it is 1 shaku 6 sun. The principle is the same as our theme. The Shakuhachi of 1 shaku 8 sun is called low-key observation. When we play the Shakuhachi, the initial sound is 1 shaku 7 sun, which we call lowered E. When it is 1 shaku 6 sun, it is called alternate tuning. When it is 1 shaku 5 sun, it is third F. And when it is 1 shaku 4 sun, it is F tuning, and so on. The one with 19 sun is deep C, and the one with 2 shaku is C tuning. In Japan, the most popular ones are the Tozen Ryu and the Kimpa Ryu. There are 5 schools of Shakuhachi being practiced in Japan today. The differences in the shape of the mouthpiece and the breadth of the performers determine the different schools. This is similar to the differences between the southern and northern schools of bamboo flute. But what I want to talk about today is actually my own experience and methods of making shakuhachi over the past few years. So I call it Chinese shakuhachi. In 2012, we set out to revive the shakuhachi and tried many methods. First, we asked people in Japan to send us some books and drawings, specifically about making shakuhachi for reference. We also consulted a large number of Chinese books, including the 18 classics of China we just mentioned. In 2019, we also applied for a district-level conference project on the craft of making shakuhachi in Yuhan. So, in the following video, I will make the wings that Chinese people need based on my own personal experience and understanding. Okay, next, we will select the materials for making the shakuhachi from those that have been stored in the warehouse for more than 5 years. But the proportion of shakuhachi made from it is relatively low. Our best material is bamboo with a relatively high density like this, with a certain thickness and a very nice appearance. In the process of selecting materials and making them, I will rely on my experience and methods of making them over the years. This may cause some unnecessary controversies online. First, when we receive the materials, the outer diameter is generally around 3 centimeters. And the density lasts and 3 centimeters. Taking 1 shaku 8 sun as an example from the appropriate position and the position of the bamboo joints, 5 centimeters. This is a relatively complete shakuhachi. Among the many materials I measured, only this one can barely meet the requirements for making a shakuhachi like the one I have in my hand. Both ends are impacted and I measured so many materials, but none of them can reach the level of the shakuhachi I have. In addition, I found that the hole positions do not have the same standard and obvious bulge as the shakuhachi we usually say. Therefore, the selection of materials for our shakuhachi is very particular and strict. Today, let me use this piece of bamboo to make a shakuhachi, right? This is the one we picked from the warehouse this morning. After picking it, the first step is the same as the southern school. We need to dry it. Before drying it, we need to remove the excess pots. We need to cut off a part of the root of the foot and then cut off a section above the 3 small joints of the bamboo. During the drying process, we need to leave some bamboo joints so that the bamboo can be properly baked. In fact, the tool for this is very simple. It's just an 8mm steel bar that we bend into a custom shape.
This is a wooden board with grooves underneath. The size of the U shape can be adjusted according to the size of your material. During the bending process, remember to insert it into the groove and bake it in the designated area. Every company needs to refer to and educate. What does this achieve? The first is the internal consistency, and the second is the external consistency in terms of color. Our natural materials have different degrees of curvature, so we may need to use a capacitor for baking, and the temperature of the capacitor should not be too high. For high-end or automotive materials, we usually use kilowatt electricity because the bamboo skin is thicker. We need to heat it slowly, keep rotating it, and stop when it emits heat. We also need to wipe the surface, and during this process, grease may appear. In the baking process, it is necessary to quickly cool it with water to prevent it from burning or charring. If it burns or chars, it is prone to breakage. Alright, the first section is now bent, and it is still curved, so we need to jump up section by section. During the baking process, when we see a slight yellowing, it means that our bamboo is cooked. The first joint is bent, and the second joint is bent. Then we move on to the second, third, and fourth joints, adding one joint at a time. This is the organization we just baked. Before making it, we need to trim the roots at the back because they contain a lot of stones. You need to trim off the excess root hairs and leave a position of 2 to 3 millimeters at the root to ensure the beauty of the subsequent preparation of the sticky rice cake. After handling the mud and sand, we first polish it on the sand tray. Okay, the first polishing is basically done. During the polishing process, there is a bell mouth shape. Okay, this is what we just polished. We need to cut a length 1 to 2 to 4, like this proportion at the root. This is my personal understanding. After finishing, from the top to the end, the size between us is 54.5, but this root hole is still punched on the bamboo joint. Not a very standard size. After removing it, you will find that the heel is very thick and you can hardly see the small hole. So first, we need to use a 5mm drill bit to drill through the bamboo joint. We can use this instrument lathe to drill through the bamboo joint. During the drilling process, we must align the center of the bamboo and not deviate. If it deviates, it will be troublesome for the subsequent internal machine processing. The tail hole has been drilled through, and what you see is this 5mm small hole. Then, according to the size of the 18mm inner diameter, we will gradually grind and make the hole standard. This is the most critical process. After finishing the head, we can use a burning method using a wolf toothstick to flatten and polish each bamboo joint one by one after the polishing on both ends of our wolf toothstick. Our internal consistency is basically through. You can see that the entire hole is very round. Then let's take a look at the inner diameter, which is relatively small. After polishing the inner diameter, the next step is to mark the lines and drill holes. We need to determine the position of the blowing hole for the Shakuhachi flute. Generally, it is similar to the principle of the Southern school, which is the position where the bamboo is relatively flat and it feels comfortable when pressed by hand. In order to make the straight line straighter, we use a piece of wood to snap the line out.
Alright, this line is exactly where we drew the white line. Now, let's determine the position of the straight hole. First, we take a shakuhachi material with precise hole positions as a reference. Using this as a guide, we can determine where to place the 18th hole on this 18-inch shakuhachi. Once we have marked the positions of the 4 holes in front, we can then determine the position of the back hole. The 18th hole is a large circular hole, typically with a diameter of around 5 to 10 millimeters. To make the hole, we use a 5mm drill. After drilling the 4 front holes, we can then determine the position of the back hole. Now, we have essentially determined the positions of the 5 holes for the 18 shakuhachi, with the first 4 moved back. So far, we have drilled the holes in the marked positions. After drilling, we need to make some cuts. The cuts on the shakuhachi are external cuts. During the polishing process, we can use a file's flat surface or carve it out. Alternatively, we can use a polishing machine. When polishing, we cut at a position about 2 centimeters or 8 centimeters from the entire bamboo. Creating a slope. The angle of the slope depends on the thickness of the material. It is important to ensure that the surface is flat and that the positions of the cuts and the straight holes are aligned on a straight line. Any deviation will affect the sound quality of the shakuhachi. Once the sound comes out, further adjustments are unnecessary. We may need to polish the inner bore, so we need to leave enough space in the back part. We press our lips against it and slightly angle it downward. Usually about a 3 to 5 degree angle. Now we have determined the position of the entire shakuhachi and polished the position where the lips touch. In fact, simple notes can already be played after polishing the cuts and the position where the lips touch. We need to polish the inner bore. This is a crucial step in making the shakuhachi. We use a wolf tooth stick to polish the thick inner bore, adjusting the inner diameter to achieve accurate tuning and better sound quality. Each round of polishing will change the sound. The polishing of the inner bore is a key step in making the shakuhachi. After the first 2 rounds of polishing, the sound is already coming out. We then need to enlarge the holes. The round holes we drill are straight up and down. We enlarge them by 9 millimeters, similar to the internal 8 in a flute. To enhance the sound projection, this step is for fine-tuning the holes. When tuning each hole, we ensure that it is hollow inside and has an internal 8 shape, creating the mournful feeling characteristic of the shakuhachi. By adjusting the hole positions and the inner diameter, we achieve the precise effect of the shakuhachi.
After debugging, I found that this ruler is very accurate, with a low-key feeling of 1 foot and 8 inches. And now our vagina happens to be at 10 degrees. Many people ask me, Mr. Hey, is your shakuhachi made of soil? If our materials are good enough, we don't need to just handle the internal organs. Just like this noble spar material. It is very thick, so we only need to adjust the intonation of the 18 by polishing the inner diameter, adjusting the size of the hole, and adjusting the cuts. We also symbolically embed our own cow horn or a piece of cow bone. In this way, we can maintain the integrity of our mouthpiece and make our embouchure sharper, resulting in a better tone. Before making the mouthpiece, we need to cut a piece of meat into an inverted triangle. How do we cut this inverted triangle? First, we draw an angle, which is the position where we want to attach the cow horn. After determining this position, we need to start cutting off this piece of meat. So today, we need to make it like an inverted triangle. We have already cut the inverted triangle, and now we have found a piece of natural cow horn, because the cow horn is relatively soft and elastic. We first find such a piece of cow horn to polish it, and then embed it on this bamboo. We shape the cow horn piece into the shape of an inverted triangle according to the angle of the mouthpiece and glue it to the bamboo. We can make the entire cow horn piece flat and polish the inner field. Because the inner wall is cylindrical, we can enroll the sandpaper into a cylindrical shape to polish the inner field. In this way, we can achieve a smooth outer edge and a rounded inner edge of the mouthpiece. Now the mouthpiece is completely done, and after it is done, we can try it again. Okay, it's basically done. But we still have a small adjustment to make because the angle of the cut directly affects the tone and intonation of the shakuhachi. So in the next step, I need to carefully polish it again. During the polishing process, we need to blow and polish at the same time. After each polishing, we will find that as long as we polish it to the right place, the sound of each point will resonate better. So after polishing it again and again, we let this bamboo produce its most perfect tone. I think this is a way to make the shakuhachi. When polishing the inner mirror, all the bamboo fibers are exposed. We need to use the red glue. or possibly daki, to apply it to the inside of the hole. The benefit is that the sound that comes out is more transparent, more sensitive, and can also prevent mold and insects. Use a sponge to bind it to the small bamboo strip. This is the pear water we just mentioned, which is a mixture of pears and alcohol. Apply it about 5 to 6 times. After each application, we have to let it dry before we can apply it again. After the second or third application, we need to polish the inner hull. This process can be repeated up to 5 or 6 times, achieving a mirror-like effect. The sound produced by the 18 will be cleaner, crisper, and have better sensitivity.